And you are listening to Meet the Chicago Historians, direct from the John DeVito Broadcast Center, and we will return right after these messages. Ron Smolin and Sorrento's Village Restaurant invite you to their annual pre-Valentine's Day Big Band Dinner and Dance Party on Sunday, February the 12th, 2012. The Ron Smolin 10-piece big band will be at Sorrento's Village Italian Restaurant located at 2318 North Manheim Road in Melrose Park, just south of Fullerton Avenue on the west side of Manheim. Doors will open at 12:30 p.m., dinner at 1 o'clock, and big band dancing will be from 2 until 5 o'clock in the afternoon. And it's only $35 per person. Don't be left out. Get your reservations early by calling area code 847-455-9440. Once again, the Ron Smolin and Sorrento's Village Italian Restaurant invite you to their annual pre-Valentine's Day Big Band Dinner and Dance Party on Sunday, February the 12th. The Ron Smolin Big 10-piece band will be playing their great orchestra, their great music, and that's at Sorrento's Village Italian Restaurant, 2318 Manheim Road in Melrose Park, and that is just south of Fullerton Avenue on the west side of the street, and they have got a huge, huge parking lot. Once again, doors will open at 12:30, dinner's at 1 o'clock. The big band dancing and music will be from 2 to 5 p.m. It's only going to be $35 per person, so don't be left out. Get your reservations early. That's on Sunday, February the 12th, 2318 Manheim Road. Call 847-455-9440 for a great day, a great dinner, and a great entertainment. That's Sunday, February the 12th at Sorrento's Village Restaurant. And now back to Meet the Chicago Historians and Jack Ryan. Go ahead, Jack.
Hey, that was quick. But it helps to get a little breather here and there. We've been enjoying our little warm-up session so far today. Must remind everyone that today is the 16th, Monday, the 16th of January. It is Martin Luther King holiday, and we would be remiss in our duties if we didn't mention something about Dr. King, personal recollections of the times we lived in. It wasn't always it was a time when someone who was leading a movement like him might have been and was kind of received in a hostile fashion, if even a minor hostile fashion. You always do that when you're rocking the boat, but when you look back on the situation, well, let's get started. Anybody have any recollections of those days, Madame?
Yes, Jack, I did do a little reading about Martin Luther King, and the way I like to tell about him is to almost bring it into snippets of what began the story and what ended it, and then if we have time, we're going to give you more of each of the subjects. So if you wouldn't mind the way I laid it out, I'd like to tell you the story. Talking about when we talked about what people said and repeating the lines, I thought there are various lines in history led to Martin Luther King's reason for what he had done. And the first one was Harry S. Truman in 1945. He made the decision to drop the atomic bomb to end World War II, and he said, "Men make history. History does not make the man." Then we have the famous Gloria Vanderbilt. She said, "We are not put on earth to see through one another. We are here to see one another through." And of course, there's Franklin Delano Roosevelt. What did he say? There is nothing to fear but fear itself. And I thought those three expressions gave this story a little bit of strength. And what did Martin Luther King say? Martin Luther King Jr., I have a dream. And he pursued it through dedicating these words into a lifetime mission to fight for civil rights. It was racial injustice for blacks because it was very strong and very virulent in the South where he lived. The cities were Montgomery and Birmingham, Alabama and Mississippi that were the dominants of this fight. And he always thought the whites took freedom for granted. He decided in 1956 that blacks should ride a bus without fear or discrimination. He wanted nonviolence, and he wanted peaceful protests. An example of him talking about the bus, we had a person called Rosa Parks, and in 1955, she decided this day that she no longer would sit at the back of the bus. And she also said, I don't always have to give up my seat to the white people. Of course, this was our problem. It was a racial segregation story. And she did. She went on to portray that area of her thoughts. And down the road, she did win out. As I say, I am giving you snippets of what all the various things that he tried to accomplish. But due to that, he convinced the people not to also use the bus. Therefore, he almost knocked the transportation system out of whack. And they realized that not only would it be a business story, but it would be the protest of the black and the white. So that was something he had to settle. And the one good thing about Martin Luther King Jr. is that he did realize he could communicate to the whites. And so people listened to his depth of what he was trying to accomplish. Anyway, he did his I Had a Dream speech in 1963 at the Lincoln Memorial. And as I say, I am jumping from beginning to end very quickly because I do have longer little paragraphs that I could tell you about. But anyway, Martin Luther King Jr. Ended up staying at the Lorraine Hotel in 1968 in Memphis, Tennessee. And he had given a speech which had a very pessimistic tone to it. And they were all up there trying to plan a march that would be, again, nonviolent, but it was a true protesting type of march. So what had happened, they were all together in the room, and he decided to step out onto the balcony and look over and remind a fella who was a musician, his name was Ben Branch, to sing Precious Lord, Take My Hand at the rally. And they conversed, and he got his message through and turned around to go back to his room, and he was immediately shot in the face. And this was in 1968. It was at 7:05 p.m. of that evening. And what had happened is a white racist, James Earl Ray, he was a career criminal, shot him and fled to London, England. And they did catch him, and he did serve, through the trial and that. He served time till he was 70 years old, and he passed away in 1998. Of course, after all said and done, naturally, as of today, it is a national holiday, which is normally January 15th. And there's a lot of streets named after him and a lot of buildings. And in 1968, the Civil Rights and Discrimination Movement started allowing housing for blacks and rentals and using the so-called white sections of airports and wherever they would be that they could not be accepted in before. And what he did is revitalize the American democracy. And I know a lot of you might have something to add to this, because as I studied about Martin Luther King, I saw another character in him, and that's the part I'd like to bring out after we all probably have something to say. And something very important was how we took the Freedom Ride for granted and just thought it was another protest. But there were some characters along the line that might give you some surprising insight how government worked and people were against, and they were all conniving together, even though they were giving Martin Luther King the feeling that they were on his side. And so I'll give you all a little time, and then maybe we'll get back to just those few facts that are pretty interesting to get through.
I just wanted to mention, Jeanette, that's very good information you have there, and it must have taken a lot of time for you to gather all that.
Well, once I get into a subject, if I miss something, I have missed it, but I like to get the main parts for our short, our capacity of understanding. I know in school, too, I used to like to get the subject and then get the important facts and then fill in the other things later.
Right.
We don't want to stay on a subject too long, But,
Sure.
But then those are facts that you seem to never forget once you've heard them.
I just wanted to add to it from past experience. I used to travel with my parents, and when I went to the South, there was restrooms for whites and restrooms for blacks, water fountains for blacks, water fountains for whites, and it was just unbelievable, how tumultuous that time was.
And how it affected you.
It did. And I believe that date he was assassinated, was that April 4th, 1968 or something like that?
Yes.
Sounds right.
The reason I remember that, because I was in a service, and it was a real, everybody was aware of what was going on, and everybody was on alert. And, they were afraid about having riots and all that going on. And it was really a tough time during it.
I could tell you a simple story along the same line. It was 1953, and we're on our way to Florida, and we stopped in Georgia to have in a restaurant. And it was like really a hot day, and so we got out of the car, and a black family and they had a little child, like I'll say 5 years old, and my husband opened the door at the restaurant to have them go ahead of us. And they went, no, a very, very guarded no, and he said, go ahead, go ahead.
Right.
And what did we know?
Yeah.
And
Who did that?
my husband.
Oh, okay.
And actually I was going there for my honeymoon.
Oh.
So here's what I wanted to bring up though. Well, then we walked into the restaurant, and we saw them walk more or less around the building. And that was it. I thought, well, we don't know this place. There might be another entrance.
Sure.
So we ordered our food, and my husband said, will you look at that? I said, what's the matter? He says, that couple that was behind us? They're by that screen door. And they keep going, well, how about a glass of water? How about, well, what was going on is the owner would not pay attention to them. And the little child wanted a drink of water.
Yeah.
All right, we were in shock. I've never witnessed
No.
that. We don't
Exactly.
think
No.
like that. And anyway, our food came, and that was still going on at the screen door. And we just looked at each other and said, I couldn't eat this if I tried.
Mm-hmm.
We were so upset for them.
Sure.
Now, no one has to understand what that means, but I never forgot that.
No.
I can still see that little boy,
Yeah.
you know, innocent, kind of like,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah,
I'm
what did I do?
thirsty. Yeah, what did I do? Good answer.
Yeah.
And, you know, it is. If you're raised a certain way where everybody's within reason equal, and Chicago didn't have much of
No,
story.
that's the I'm going to tell you one quick story. Actually, I read it in a Legion magazine, written last year about a black sailor from the South, etc. And he's signed to Great Lakes, and he's going to become a sailor, not a steward. This was, you know, during World War II. You know, prior to that, in the Navy, they were all stewards.
Yes.
So when he gets to Great Lakes, he has indoctrination. They said, now, we have to tell you a few things about Chicago. And he said, oh, here it goes again. He said, no. He said, it's just the opposite. He says, you can go into any restaurant, you can go into any department store, you can ride the public transportation. He said, but, he said, you're in uniform. You must be in uniform. He said, you know, you must behave, you know, act accordingly. But he said, there is no no separate anything.
No.
And he said, I couldn't believe it. And the other thing is that occasionally you get stopped by or see other people, and he had a stripe indicating or something that he was a seaman, not a steward. They said, you know, what are you wearing that for? He was in the first class that actually were seamen. You know, it's around 1943 or so. But he said, and he loved Chicago as a result. He never did reside here, but we took this all for granted, you
Right.
know. You know, I used to, you know, I'm a North Sider. I used to go to the South Side, visit all the firehouses in Bronzeville and all that, walk from one to the other. No one ever bothered me,
Not at all.
you know, and they always seemed to be a very happy, you know. But at the same time, in my grammar in high school, we didn't, at that time, have any black students. We eventually did, because I lived only 4 blocks from what ultimately became Cabrini Green. They already had the Cabrini part, but a lot of that was white, you know, when it first opened before the war.
How did it turn green?
It turned green because they wanted it to turn green. That was the high-rise
The
part
first
of it.
Green Industries.
Yeah, first Green Industries, yeah. And
And those projects were very attractive.
yeah,
Oh, yeah. I mean, it, you know, it offered all
the low rises are
appliances.
still there. The Cabrini part, you know, from
Right.
Chicago
I
to
mean,
Oak
they-
Street, they're still there.
Well, I mean, how many of us have lived in buildings that had elevators?
Never.
Big, pretty good sized apartments. I mean, I think I was in just about all the high-rise projects in the city at one time or other. As a matter of fact, when you relate that April 4th, I was in my first year in the job, about the 3rd or 4th month on the street,
Oh.
afternoons, working with a guy I came on the job with, another young white dude. Steve Yackel was his name. He later went in the fire department.
Oh, yeah.
And we're coming down the elevator in Robert Taylor Homes, like 5047 Federal,
Yeah.
and the kids are saying, Dr. King been killed. I said, boys, don't be disrespectful like that, you know.
Yeah.
Well, it was
Little,
true.
little did you know.
It
yeah.
was true, yeah.
Yeah.
So,
That was a very tumultuous times, what Tom, what you said, too.
Right.
The riots
Yeah,
that
the
occurred.
riots that
Yeah.
occurred, you
Right.
know,
How about around
Madison Street.
Madison,
Those
and
were not as
Pulaski, and all
Roosevelt, yeah.
burned out.
those weren't as spontaneous as, I mean, there were people out there
Yeah.
trying to get them going.
Yeah.
They never got the south side going like they did the west side.
Yeah,
And I know because
That's
I
a
was
good
there.
yeah. There was a little bit on 63rd Street, I
Yeah, well, yeah, there was some
understand.
stuff.
Yeah.
We found out from firsthand experiences that the people were being locked up, or the same guys were locking up all the times anyway for breaking into places or
Yeah,
whatever. You know?
yeah.
They were the career criminal
The
types.
usual suspects.
The
Breaking
real
the stores,
punks,
Yeah.
Well, look
Yeah.
at how many celebrities have made many nightclubs and
Well-
wherever wealthy and you know, prosperous, yet they could never sleep
No.
in that hotel.
No.
Yeah.
They could never come through the front door.
Can I tell you a personal experience? I'm growing up on Cleveland Avenue in the 1500 block, and there was an Italian guy walking up the. Everybody walked to North Avenue, which was the shopping, you know. And we actually had the first A&P. It's really a supermarket, and so this guy's name was Jack Costanza, and so someone told me a story about it. He said, "Well, this guy." played the drums and the bongos, and he got hooked up with the Nat King Cole Trio. And they eventually go to Las Vegas. Now, Jack Costanza's white. He can stay in the hotel. The Nat King Cole, who is the headliner, whose name is out on the marquee out there, the big sign, he can't stay in. Not only can't stay in the hotel, he's got to come in the back, the kitchen entrance. So they have one particular show. They're all sweaty, etc. So they go into Jack's. They take the elevator up to Jack's apartment to take a shower and change clothes, etc. And when they come out, they're spotted, etc. And the manager says something to I forget the Jack Entratter or somebody was the booking agent, and so they have a little confrontation, and finally Nat King Cole says, I'm the headliner here, and he said, I can't even stay in a hotel and you look at the money you're paying me. And Jack said, you know what, you're right. He said, from now on, you come in the front door.
Right, and
that broke the
Right,
yeah.
and ironic to that, I believe Frank Sinatra had something to do with that too.
I think so.
Sammy
Davis Jr.
Right.
Yeah.
He even refused to sign anything that was a contract if he realized that any black person in his entourage or the band or whatever made up the play, the stage show, could not be there. So that was a big subject.
I must say, I think it's fair to observe that racial problems in the United States were not exclusively in the South. And Southerners often resented the fact that they felt that they were being made to appear as though the racial difficulties were exclusively a Southern problem. I remember my father lived in Detroit before World War II, and he worked at I think what was probably the most prestigious hotel in downtown Detroit at that time, and he saw many celebrities. My dad met Henry Ford. He met Lucille Ball and Desi Arnaz. Xavier Cugat was the band leader in the dining room where my dad worked. And one of those who came was Joe Louis, who of course was the great heavyweight champion. And I remember my dad saying that Joe Louis was the first black man to be served at the main bar in this hotel. Prior to that, in Detroit, in the state of Michigan, well north of the South, blacks were not served in the more exclusive hotels and dining rooms. So the only reason I cite that is that racial problems were not exclusively down south. And,
well, I think here in Chicago we had de facto segregation through the 50s. I remember as a boy never seeing a black face in downtown Chicago, unless maybe you got behind a serving line. You saw service workers here and there, but no shoppers, nobody in that bustle of people on State Street or Michigan Avenue. Until maybe the early 60s, then the changes started.
It was said at the time that white Southerners actually had more interaction and more dealing with black people than white Northerners did, because there wasn't that same geographical segregation of housing in Southern cities. And I heard a saying once. They said that in the South, as regarding blacks, it doesn't matter how close you get, as long as you don't get too high. Whereas in the North, they didn't care how high you got, as long as you didn't get too close. And there were different attitudes between
arguments
the North
made that
and South.
Chicago is still among the most segregaed cities in the country.
And when Martin Luther King came to Chicago, he was not.
We saw that reception in Marquette Park.
Now you're getting Roger.
Here we go.
Traditionally, we've had our own German, Italian, Irish neighborhoods as it was. Am I right?
Yeah,
exactly. City of neighborhoods.
Still do to some extent.
Right. The old neighborhood. I mean, it wasn't 100%, but whatever.
No.
I think a lot of it relates back to that.
And you know what? Chicago, too, because I come into Chicago from Minnesota. And here's what I want to say. Chicago is more nationality religion than what we think of the word black.
From a certain parish.
Exactly. And
Yeah.
I could relate to that. I went from the north side of Chicago, many years of living there, and built on the southwest side. the Archer Harlem area, and they call that Garfield Ridge. Lovely area.
God's country.
Yeah, something about it. But I mean, the point is, quite an adjustment, and anytime I talked to somebody about housing or anything that I was interested in, there was no street name, no numbers.
No.
It was everybody's parish.
Yeah, what
Well,
parish?
if you didn't know the parish, you did not know where you were going to end up living. So I found that to be not discriminative, but a separation of Madison Street North and Madison Street South were two different worlds. And that's what I found.
Baseball team.
Yeah, baseball is
That still exists in particular.
Oh, sure, and that's what I'm
North
trying to
Siders
say.
and South
and
Siders.
it will never change. It
Right.
will never change.
I find more of that kind of segregation or discrimination than black and white.
Well, we didn't live in West Englewood or Ogden Hill. We lived in St. Theodore Parish.
There
yeah,
you are.
right. Yeah.
That's what I meant.
I know.
People knew what you were talking about.
Oh,
whether
they
were-
do.
Oh,
whether
yeah.
they were,
I
Roman
ended
Catholic
up
or not.
talking like
And they
that
might know the
myself.
pastor's name. and,
You get to be the people you
Jack,
are.
I spent 4 years at the Englewood Fire Alarm at 64th and Wentworth, and and they were all South Siders. I was the only North Sider, and so he said, "The North Side, that's north of Garfield Boulevard, isn't it?" And that was about it. They didn't.
I had a new neighbor who knew to me say she once went as far as Madison Street.
Yeah.
That was like a trip.
Yeah.
The other
sure.
side was
Yeah,
another part of Chicago.
Yeah.
There's a song that I hear on St. Patrick's Day that I just heard a couple of years ago. I love it. We're the South Side Irish, and we have
that, John?
two favorite clubs, the Go White Sox, and whoever plays the Cubs.
Yeah.
We got
Yeah.
I
Right.
mean, so
Yeah.
you see what
That's-
I mean.
that's-
Yeah.
Well,
What I'm
Southside Irish
trying
are
to
getting
say-
a parade again.
Oh
this
yeah.
year.
Yeah. I see that.
Yeah.
And also, I think there's an accent too from north side to south side. There's Chicago and Chicago. That's all
Chicago.
comes out of. Yeah.
You know what
Mayor
I
Daley.
find. I don't know, Jack, because you worked downtown for a while in the police department. They're the South Siders. I'm a North Sider, but they seem to be relaxed. They don't seem to be uptight. The police department, I don't know if it's about police, but the fire department, they're more relaxed, etc.
yeah.
Oh, you got a fire? Okay, let's go. We'll go put it out. And
Yeah.
don't worry about the bosses. They don't come around. How come you got a T-shirt on? Well, I'll put the shirt on when the
I did notice when Backdraft came out, everybody was in their nice uniform shirts sitting around the houses when you go by there. Remember that?
Yeah. No, it's that.
Let me just say that this is a great city, and the many wards and the fine ethnic groups that make up the city of Chicago. And I don't care where they are, and I don't care where they come from. There'll be law and order in the city of Chicago as long as I'm the mayor. And I thank you very much.
Gentlemen,
Very
look,
good,
Get
very
it
good.
straight. The policeman's not here to create disorder.
Policeman's here to preserve disorder.
Yeah.
The WMAQ radio used to do that in their. They had that recording on their Sunday night. They had a press conference or recorded news conference. They'd always start out with that. But now you're referring to there was big criticism for Richard J. after the riots had calmed down.
Yeah.
He came out and he said that looters should be shot to wing them, and arsonists should be shot to kill. Well, something's wrong with that.
Shoot
too.
to kill.
Yeah.
I really didn't say anything that wasn't in the law. My only argument was he said it after the thing was over with, more or less. But there's no such thing as shooting to wing someone, by the way.
No.
If you haven't got
Police don't.
Right.
justified use of deadly force,
Yeah.
you better not be
just
pulling
don't,
that way.
yeah.
I'll say, and I know, I can give you thousands of things I can criticize the police department about, but teaching us about using deadly force was not one of them. We really got that hammered in,
Yeah.
Don't be using the gun unless you yourself or someone else is in danger. And that was,
I mean, of course, I was in politics, and it's amazing because prior to that, Richard J. Daley, by most Republicans, did not think very well of Richard J. Daley. Suburban Republicans, downstate, to him, he was the Chicago machine. He was the partisan guy that was always leading their candidates and beating. That changed all of a sudden, Richard J. Daley became Mr. Conservative. He was Mr. Law and Order. And after that quotation, Republicans loved the first Mayor Daley. I mean, Republicans thought of him. He's one of us. He's
The real Mayor Daley.
first about Richard J.
Yeah.
It was amazing how that. I mean, the conservatives, Republicans would come up and ask him for his autograph. I mean, there was comments about this. His whole image, and to the country at large, he became this symbol of law and order and conservatism, and so it really changed. And before that, he was this partisan Democrat. He was this machine guy, you know.
Yeah.
Which he is and was. Yeah.
That's not how
But that
people
wasn't his
thought
first
of him
image,
afterward.
right.
The city that worked, you know, and you felt proud to be you know, because it did work, you know.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
You know, you call up and you want garbage picked up or street light or something like that fixed, etc. You know, and
you know, giving
it-
that credit, however we have maybe our economic problem now, if you've traveled anywhere within the United States in the word big city, we really have a very well-run city.
Yeah.
And clean
clean,
Very clean,
and
yes.
friendly.
yeah.
Friendly
Yeah.
doesn't come out a lot, but it's
Yeah.
a good city.
You know, David Letterman had said that when he did his show here. He said, and he got. I don't listen to him that much anymore since he became a character assassin. Yeah. But anyway, he said he couldn't get over how friendly and helpful people were, even when there was no angle for them in it.
Yeah.
You know, when they were
Yeah.
with them. So
Yeah.
if you go to New York or New Jersey area, it's like you stop at the booth. Is this the road? What?
Yeah.
They jump. But they're so used to that. They don't mean it. That's
Yeah.
the way they are.
Yeah.
It's like people from India. They sound very bossy. Well, that's just something in the culture.
Yeah.
There was the joke about the New York policeman who flagged down a truck driver in Manhattan and said, he says, "Hey, buddy, you realize you almost hit that little old lady 2 blocks down?" And he's, "Well, I'm sorry, officer. I'll go back and take another crack at it."
Who was it that said one time? He said, "I was jaywalking in Chicago, and a policeman stops him, and he said, 'Hey,' he said, you know, something about jaywalking,' and he said, 'How did you cross in the middle of the street anyway?' He said, 'Yeah,' he said, 'You know, you did.' He was sort of complimenting him. You know, you did a nice zigzag. You did a conga line out there, you know, between traffic. Anybody else would say, get your rear end out of here, you know." And it is true. If you ask, you know, I worked
is.
downtown City Hall most of my career, and I'd walk out, and I don't know, people would ask me, "Hey, where's Adams Street? I'm going to, you know, the Brauhaus or this or that or something, you know." And Berghoff's, excuse me, yeah. And and there's a young kid, I'll never forget. He's from Germany, excellent English accent. He was a bank student. And he said, "Oh, I'm going to go here and there," and you know, and he's got his map out there and knapsack, and he wanted to go to University of Illinois, you know, Circle Campus. They said, "That's a long walk." He said, "I'm okay," but he knew, and he knew what he wanted to do, and they, you know what they always say, the Lake Michigan. He said it is just.
And the best
the
skyline.
lakefront, skyline.
Oh,
he said,
it is.
He said you undersell your city.
Yes,
You really do.
No,
They hear
it's-
lake, they think it's going to be like Maple Lake or Lake Wobegon or
yeah,
somewhere.
this thing you can't.
It's the inland sea.
Yeah, right. You can't see the end of it. It's 60 miles. You know.
We just
Right.
take it for granted.
I know. We take
Exactly,
everything.
and that's why I would.
You want to
like
go to the
stress
beach, Washington
that.
Avenue Beach, Oak Street
Anything
Beach.
you want.
Yeah. You want to go to Lincoln
Rainbow
Park
Beach?
Zoo, Rainbow Beach. Yeah.
You could
63rd
have a
Street Beach.
you know, when we go think of vacation, we think of somewhere else. But if you took a vacation in Chicago, you would not have enough time to see
No,
everything.
You're right.
No.
Museums.
You would
Museums,
ne-
yeah.
Museums and
Yeah.
So that's just it.
Yeah.
No,
No.
and then what is inside of these hotels? There's
Yeah.
cathedrals.
the architecture down
The
Beautiful.
there.
architecture.
Yeah.
You know, I mean.
A lot of locals haven't been to the top of the Hancock or the Sears, now the Willis Tower. You get a lot of that,
Right,
too.
Or,
Yeah.
or even been, as they say, in the loop
Yeah.
for 35 years.
Yeah.
You know, all it
Yeah.
would take is a
Yeah.
L ride or a,
Right.
you know.
Yeah.
But I mean, if you wanted to see something,
Yeah.
you could
Just,
not finish it on
yeah.
a vacation.
I
Look-
take
look
my
at-
students, you know, on field trip. We call them field trips, you know.
Look at the inside of the Rookery building or the Marquette
I was
building.
just thinking of the
Yeah.
Rookery
Yeah.
building.
Yeah. Yeah.
There are,
Can't tire of it.
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
and we don't even have the workers that could duplicate that if it had to be done.
You couldn't pay those nowadays.
No.
That's
Couldn't-
why Jeffrey Bear and Channel 11,
Oh, isn't that
they're
marvelous?
unbelievable,
His
you know,
tours,
in
yeah.
tours,
Yeah.
in,
Yeah.
you know.
Marvelous.
Yeah.
Speaking of discrimination that we find hard to believe, a lot of things are overlooked. Like you were saying before, we're always pointing our finger at Alabama, Mississippi, where we're in the South. Priest, I can't think of his name now. He was stationed over at my alma mater, St. Rita, after I was out of there. He was from some town right near Wisconsin, some town right near Milwaukee. And this town had a law on the books when he was a kid that all non-whites were supposed to be out of town by sundown.
Wow.
Now, they were referring to the Indians at the reservation, but nonetheless,
Yeah.
anytime you have anything like that, you're excluding any group. It's
Sure.
wrong. And it's unbelievable that would be in Wisconsin, the way we hear it anyway.
Yeah.
And another thing is, what about all these years, and these existed, I guess, until the 60s, these restricted hotels, where if you were Jewish, you weren't supposed to be staying there.
Yeah.
As a matter of fact, they couldn't stay there. Groucho Marx said, was it okay if his daughter went into the water, into the pool, half submerged, and she was only half Jewish?
Yeah.
But I mean, there was a lot of hurt in what
That
he
was
said.
Yeah.
The movie
Well-
Gentleman's Agreement.
Yeah,
made-
right.
It
Yeah.
was about that very
But they
issue.
keep denying. Oh no, sir. Yeah.
Yeah.
He took the name
Definitely.
Greenstein or something like that.
Definitely.
Or did they call them
I-
restrictive covenants, where you
Yeah.
blacks
How-
were really kept out of certain neighborhoods by the realtors?
Yeah.
And other people too,
Exactly.
Kath.
Exactly, right.
You know,
That's
yeah,
right.
There,
you know,
there
they're-
are newspaper ads. You go back into the 19th century. Job wanted ads that said
Oh, they
no,
would
no
tell you-
Irish need apply.
Mhm.
That's right.
Yeah.
Mhm.
That's
And of
incredible.
course, we used the word for black, colored.
Yeah.
That's right.
you
That's
know.
right.
Darkies. Remember that? Darkies.
Yes.
Whoa,
Darkies.
You know,
yeah.
yes.
Yeah.
But like in my case, being on a golf course as a job, how many of our celebrity type players could not join a lot of these
Yeah.
clubs
Could not join
due
the
to
clubs. Yeah.
color or
Right.
Religion.
Or religion.
or
Yeah.
Right.
you know, or that nationality, whatever it was.
Jules Pfeiffer did. You remember the Pfeiffer cartoons with the series of
Yes.
the same characters saying,
Pfeiffer's Fables. Over
and
there?
he
Yeah.
did one where this was during the Civil Rights Movement, where he had this black fellow, and he's saying, "I am black. It is now the preferred term for people of my race. It replaced Afro-American, which replaced colored people, which replaced Negro, which replaced black."
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Right.
That's a good
Yeah.
point.
Yeah.
That's a good point. That's a good
Cyclical,
point.
wasn't it?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
I remember when I was at the City College at the Wilson branch, which is now the Kennedy King, there was an essay about that. How many different names there had been, like Moorish Americans, and all kinds
Yeah.
of euphemisms. When it comes down to it, it's how you respect the person, not what you call them.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
When I was, Tom, you were talking, you were in the service. When I was in the service during the Korean War, we had integration, in the our company, and also
In the camps.
I was an MP, and we had another MP. I was in a division, but we had a post MP, and we also had really a Stalag 17 type. It was exactly with the towers and everything. It had been a prisoner of
It's
war
a camper.
Well,
I see nothing.
I was doing. Occasionally, had to do tower duty up there. It's a different MOS, different security. But anyway, and an old time sergeant, he says, and this was for our guys, people that were serving less than 6 months. He said, if you see them climbing over the fence, he said, see those coal piles over there? He said, we had a carbine. He said, shoot into the coal piles if you don't want to shoot one of your own guys, but shoot, because he said. But we had a Captain Hudson over there who was in charge of security there, and he did officer today, and he was. We go along guy, but he was a captain. You respected him. You respected that rank.
Were you at
Yeah.
Fort Leonard Wood?
No, I was
Oh.
at Fort Lewis in the
Okay.
state of Washington.
Uh-huh.
I spent most of my time there, and so I mean there was integration. I was in a pup tent with a corporal, black guy. Who,
I was going to mention when I was in Vietnam, it was a big thing, camaraderie. I mean, it's, some of my best friends were black, and I got along with them better than whites, believe it or not.
Yeah.
I can believe
And
that.
everybody watched each other's back,
Yeah.
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
it really
Yeah.
made you feel good.
We had the same thing. I had a Corporal Arnold, and we used to, we both lived off post. I got married while I was there, and so we had a locker, and we were next to each other. And he told me, he said, don't ever worry about changing your clothes, because sometimes you had to change for, retreat and all that. He said, I can change my clothes in 3 to 5 minutes, go from fatigues to first class, and stuff. He said, don't ever worry about that, And, everybody got along. I never saw any racial, problems, stopping people, for IDs or stuff like that. In fact, it was the opposite. You might say to a black guy, and this happened to me one time in Yakima, Washington, where two black guys were, they had been apprehended for doing something, and I looked, I said, well, they don't have a proper pass. He said, they're mine, they're not yours. So I put them in the Jeep. So he said, we got a proper pass. I said, shut up. Yeah. Take them back to the camp, and he said, now go out and, go on pass again. But he said, they're picking you up because they want to pick on you.
Sound like Mr. Roberts or something.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Yeah. I was frankly scared at the time before I went in the service because of the black and white situation, the racial.
Yeah.
And I was really wondering how I'd get along with everybody,
Yeah.
and it turned out to be for the better.
Yeah.
My experience goes back to the fact when I worked at WDC Radio, and I had a 12 a.m. to 6 a.m. shift, and it was during the time in '66.
That's a long time. Yeah.
There were riots, I believe.
Oh, sure.
66?
Yeah, in '66.
I guess.
We had some in
If you
65.
say so.
Yeah, because I was on the air.
West Side. Yeah.
No, I'm sorry. It was. No, was it six? It was 67.
68.
I thought it
Well,
was
68
67.
was but we had riots on the West Side in 65.
With the
I think you're right.
action
Well,
with
anyway,
the-
Yeah.
it was
whole-
it was
Yeah.
during the
There were
time.
other
Yeah,
riots,
right.
other than even when Martin Luther King was killed, there were riots
Before that.
earlier.
Oh,
than
yeah.
that.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Watts
Got
was
the
the big
year
one.
wrong. Yeah.
But I know it was during
But
the
here-
time when I was supposed to.
Disturbances
Yeah.
more maybe than
Right.
riots,
Watts was
but
65.
yeah.
I think you're right.
And I was supposed to be on the air, so I had to take Pulaski Avenue all the way down to 3860 West Ogden. Okay,
Oh, sure.
and as I was going, I didn't know if I should be going to work or not, but I did.
Yeah.
And just about every street, main street, the National Guard was set up there with
Yeah.
machine guns.
Yeah.
And I was just going past the lights. They said, go, go, go,
Go,
go,
yeah.
go, 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 go.
Yeah.
So I got to the station and I got there. And that wasn't the rough part. The rough part was they broke the window of the station. And then when I left in the morning, after I finished the show with Lydia Paczynski, she was the one that I used to help log,
yeah.
the air.
Who's that?
Lydia Paczynski, yeah.
I have to say, a good rule of thumb if you're driving is if a guy with a machine gun tells you to keep going, keep going.
Go,
Yes, I did.
right.
I definitely did.
A lot of guys in Chicago, machine guns.
Yeah. We had the firehouse right across the street, 2111 Hamlin, just south of
okay.
Ogden. Yeah.
I can remember that period you're talking about. I was put in for a medal for this. I saved the guy's life. I shot at him and missed.
Years.
I shot at him and missed. So on that happy note, we're getting a signal. We have another
Okay,
break
I'll
time.
finish the story after.
Yeah.
Take it away, John. Yeah, we'll hold that note.
Okay.
Hold that thought.